All right, people. It is Thursday. It is 12 o'clock. And if you are hearing Prince music, it means that you are inside of the Greenhouse Effect. And I am your host, Hayden Greene. Literally your Green Lantern. La da. I posted this pic. I posted a pic of me wearing this shirt for Mother's Day. I was like, oh man, I haven't worn that shirt in forever. So I'm wearing it now. So this is my Green Lantern shirt. Sorry that I'm a little bit late. Had to take care of a thing or two. All right. I'm going to try something out here. I'm going to see if I can go to my page on my computer while being live on if that actually works. Woo! Oh, wait a minute. Looky here. It actually does work. Okay. So I'm going to put something up here, and we'll talk about it later. Okay. So welcome to the Greenhouse Effect. I am your host, Hayden Greene. We've got 3 people watching. What's up, Steven? Long time no see. I hope all is well with Makuho. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I think the first thing that we're going to delve into is the fact that Fauci is out with Trump. Fauci, the man that he hung every single bit of his information on, is now out with Trump, which is crazy, and I don't understand um, where the line is anymore. And what I mean is that when we are when we're looking at a leader and we're looking at somebody who is in charge of a country, whether it's in charge of a group or a club or in charge of a fraternity or anything like that, you have to be very, very cautious when that person only wants to be surrounded by sycophants and yes men or yes people, and that's the main cautionary tale that you always have to look out for. And so right now we are in a time where nobody really knows exactly what the major issues are, what the future is going to be. We don't know whether or not we're going to be able to have a cure in the next couple of weeks. We don't know, or next couple of weeks, next couple of months, next couple of years. I saw a meme a couple of weeks ago, and it scared the bejesus out of me because it said a time traveler came back and said, "Hey, what year is it?" And the person said 2020, and the time traveler said, "Oh, the first year of the quarantine," and the person said, "The what?" Could you imagine if this was our new normal, where everybody just stayed home? And that I think that would be, I think that's something that scares a lot of people. Like this is not a couple months. It's not a couple weeks. This might be a couple years. Oof. All right. So, like I said, we don't know what's going on. We don't know where our cure is going to come from. We don't know whether or not we're going to get a cure. We don't know whether or not we're going to get a something that will be allow us to treat this disease faster. Because there's one thing is a cure, which is you get it and you get the disease, and immediately there's something that gets rid of the disease in your body. Then there is a vaccine that prevents you from getting the disease, and then there are, of course, treatment methods. Right now, we are in the place where we are in treatment methods, where what we do is when somebody comes into the hospital, they're treated and we try to get them out of the hospital as fast as possible. What we are trying to get to is a cure where there are no, so when you walk in, you're given this medication or you're given this treatment and the disease is gone, right? And that's not what we have right now, and that's confusing to a lot of people. A lot of people think it's like, oh, people come in and they give them medication and it knocks the virus out of their body. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that we are dealing with the symptoms. We are dealing with what's happening in the people's bodies. We are monitoring them and we're addressing their symptoms. We're not actually addressing the actual disease, right? And so until we get to the point where we actually have a cure or we have a vaccine, that's when I think people feel a little bit more safe about bringing people out. Also read something the other day, opening up or releasing, opening up governments, or sorry, opening up cities doesn't mean that they've found a way to treat this. It simply means that the hospitals now have the capacity for you in the emergency rooms, right? So opening up simply means we had to shut it down so that the hospitals could reset, could take on all of the first wave, and opening back up simply means that those hospitals are at a point where that they could take whatever cases are coming. It doesn't mean that the disease is no longer there. No, it doesn't mean that the virus is no longer there. And so those are things that get people mixed up all the time. And so you see people protesting in Georgia and Michigan and all the rest of these places, and they want to open back up. And they seem to feel like, oh, okay, well, we've beat the disease. We haven't beat the disease yet. The virus is still out there. Opening back up simply means that you have the capacity to deal with whatever sick people come your way. Doesn't mean that less people are getting sick. And that's a real distinction that people need to understand. And anyway, and so the first person who does not understand that is the person who is sitting in the White House, and he doesn't get it. He doesn't get how what we're doing right now is helping the hospitals and making sure that we have the capacity to deal with people who do get sick. What he thinks is that, oh, we've got the virus under control. We don't. We don't. We just don't have the virus under control. We don't have a cure. We don't have a vaccine. We barely have any treatment methods that actually work. So when we talk about opening back up, it is with a lot of precautions. And and the problem there is that Dr. Fauci is a scientist. And if you know anything about the current person in the White House, he does not like when science people speak. He thinks that it's all a hoax. In fact, and you don't have to believe me about it, he said it many, many times that certain things are a hoax, and he said this virus was a hoax. He said this whole epidemic was a hoax. He has looked at other scientific findings about other things and called that a hoax. So now that Fauci is saying, okay, we've got somewhat of a control on this, on the infection rate. We've got somewhat of a control on how hospitals are dealing with this, but we should take it slowly, right? We should take it slowly in terms of reopening up the government. The minute he said that, Trump was like, "You're not on my side. You're not playing by my rules." And again, as I said before, we have to be very, very cautious when the leader of any group, whether it is a Cub Scout leader, or a leader of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or the leader of the country, or the leader of your family. When any leader of any group is only concerned with surrounding themselves with sycophants and people who will only agree with them, you have a problem. Houston, we have a problem, right? And so the minute he said something that was out of line with what the White House has been pushing out goes Fauci. Out goes Fauci. I had a Facebook friend post to say that Donald Coronavirus Trump wasn't a bad guy, and I laughed at the same time. So it's very, very beware, and it's quite obvious why Trump wants the government back open. He wants to be able to restart the economy, because that is the only thing that he's going to be able to hang his hat on when it's time for the voters to go to the polls in November. And he's not off, right? He's not completely off with this, because right. And so, and Michael just said the same thing that I did, right? So he's not off with this, and I'll tell you why. People have short-term memories. People have very, very short-term memories. Right now, as bad of a job as you see Trump doing, you can be you can rest assured that a couple of months of good things, whether it is getting back outside and being being outside and in the warm weather, or or whether it is getting back to work or getting some money in your pocket, you can be sure that with a couple of weeks of good things happening, the American public will start to forget how bad this was. And you may say, it's like, how can you forget this? It's like, I've seen it, right? And we've all seen it. We've all seen how easily we forget, how easily that it's like, oh, that wasn't really that bad. And then when you, and Time Hop is great about this, right? So when you see Time Hop tell you stuff about, oh, like, remember when this was happening, and you're like, holy crap, I can't remember, I can't believe that I forgot how bad this thing was, right? And so Dunn is saying that that economy wasn't his to begin with, and so that's always the case, right? So whenever we are looking at an economy, especially with in the first term of a president, it is not the it is not that president's doing. There is not enough time for any one president to affect the economy in any form or fashion. Now, if you're talking about the second term, that's something different, right? But if you are talking about the first term of the of um, any president's reign, woo, like a king, term in office, whatever he's dealing with, and unfortunately it's only been hymns, whatever he's dealing with is inherited from before. So if you've got a booming economy, it's coming from before. If you've got an economy that you have to fix, it's coming from before. And a lot of presidents don't get to the second term because the public is not willing to let them get him in, and the economy was in a tank, and he had to do things to fix it. He didn't tank the economy. That's what he inherited, and he was fortunate enough that it happened within the first year or so of his presidency, so that he had a couple of years in order to fix it. And so by the time it came for reelection, there was that whole, memory that is not permanent, right? So you forget how bad the economy was, you forget the bailout, you forget about all the rest of that stuff. All you know is that I'm going to the polls and I have money in my pocket. I'm going to the polls, I have a job. I'm going to the polls and my boy has a job, or my homegirl has a job, right? So human nature is to move on quickly. Yes, that is true, Weston. But one of the things that we have to really take into account is that we are the same humans that are in charge of putting people who will make decisions about the next 4 to 8 years of our life into office. And if we are not careful and we don't use that memory, if we're not able to access that memory, we're going to do some really dangerous things to ourselves. It's like the 97 Bulls coming off of 2 consecutive championships and then adding Bill Wennington. Look, man, I can't talk about the Bulls, man. And for those of you who have watched The Last Dance, God bless you, right? Because I'm a Knicks fan. I cannot watch that. I can't. I saw Patrick Ewing post the same thing. It's like, I lived through that. I'm not going to be able to watch that. I can't watch that. I don't know how y'all Knicks fans are watching this, and I watched some of the commentary about the Last Dance, and about Dennis Rodman, and how Michael Jordan treated people and all the rest of that stuff. And I'm like, that's all good. I'm not going to watch Michael Jordan put a double nickel on my Knicks again. Who needs that, right? If nothing else is on, I will watch my palm, right? I'll read my palm, and I'll figure out my future before I sit there and watch Michael Jordan and the Bulls abuse my Knicks again. I can't do it. I can't do it. God bless you, people who have been able to do it. My memory is good enough for that. I'm not about to do it again. Speaking, I wanted to jump back in about presidents and people that came before him. Recently, as I think about two days ago, Mitch McConnell, and this is crazy to me. Mitch McConnell said that former President Obama was classless because he criticized the current administration for the way that they're handling the coronavirus. And his statement was that yes, Moscow Mitch, he said that that President Obama should take example from the former Bushes, where when they were out of office, they didn't have anything bad to say about the president that was in office next. So Bush number one left for Clinton, and Bush number two left, and Obama came in. What are you saying bad? I mean, like, and I'm almost positive that Bush number one said something deplorable about Clinton when the whole Monica Lewinsky thing went down. Almost positive about that. But anyway, if you're using the word classless to describe a president, Mitch McConnell, you got to go down a couple of different presidents before you get to Obama. I don't care what your partisan, I don't care what your party line is, but you've got to go down the list pretty far down before you get to Obama in terms of calling somebody classless. The top of your list is in the Oval Office right now, right? So that's mind blowing to me that that's the terminology that he decided to use, and that he decided that's where he wanted to. That's where he decided he wanted to make his statement. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So I don't know. I think that Mitch McConnell needs to be voted out, and I'm not in his district, but if you are listening to me and at the sound of my term, then you need to be the people who vote out Mitch McConnell. So anyway, so that's just one of those things that just is mind-blowing to me. The other thing that's mind-blowing to me is the Supreme Court is hearing arguments by phone. Could you imagine? I would love to be, I don't know if it's actually on CNN or something like that, but I would love to be a fly on the wall and listen in to the Supreme Court as they listen to arguments on the phone. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is listening to arguments on the phone, right? Yeah, I know he's in Kentucky. So, like, there's somebody who's running against him. I mean, there's always somebody who's running against him. But there's somebody who's running against him who needs our support, because Mitch McConnell needs to get out of there. He's awful. You like my shirt, Jen? This is my Green Lantern shirt. I have 3 Green Lantern shirts. Kind of obsessed a little bit. But the Supreme Court is listening to arguments over the phone. And so the interesting thing about this, and this is what I'm bringing up, this is why I bring this up. So the interesting thing about this is that Clarence Thomas is actually speaking. So, I mean, on the surface, you're like, oh, okay, well, what's so big about that? Clarence Thomas is a Supreme Court judge. I would guess that he speaks all the time, right? No. If you know anything about Clarence Thomas, he does not talk. There was a 2-year period in which he never uttered a word during arguments. So here's the crazy thing about this, right? This is a man that was appointed to the Supreme Court, and he does not write dissents. He does not write anything. He doesn't speak. He just simply votes yay or no, right? And so, yes, he can speak. He actually can speak, and he has been talking. And it is the most mind-blowing thing that this is a man who has a job that all you simply have to do is listen. All he does is listen, use the Constitution, we hope, and make a decision of one way or the other, right? And never speaks, never writes, never does any of that stuff. And so every time I hear that, it just blows my mind. I'm like, well, what does he do, right? Because if you're going to really break it down, most of the Supreme Court justices they they pretty much vote on party lines. A lot of them vote on pretty lines, right? And so if you are a Republican judge, more than likely you're probably going to vote yay on conservative things, and if you are a Democratic judge, you're probably going to vote yay on liberal things. That's just the way that and this is why the Supreme Court is so, you know, so trepidatious. Right now we have five conservatives and we have four liberals on the bench, and if you look at the way that they vote, it pretty much is along those lines, right? So if Clarence Thomas is pretty much always going to vote on the conservative side, he knows where he stands on particular issues. He's not writing any dissents. He's not writing any opinions about it, and he's not talking. What is he doing? The man didn't talk for 2 years. 2 years. It's bananas. It is absolutely bananas to me, and so that's one of the things that I'm actually thankful for this coronavirus, because now we get him to do his job a little bit, right? Now we get him to actually speak. I've actually heard a couple of things that he's talked about, and if you've ever heard Clarence Thomas talk, you wish that you didn't hear Clarence Thomas talk. He's an intelligent man. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but Clarence Thomas is the most boring person to listen to. Boring. And so we're now forcing him, now he's being forced to ask questions, now he's being forced to actually speak. And I think it's hilarious to me that this is what it took to get Clarence Thomas to actually open his mouth and do something more than just sit on the bench, listen, and vote yay or nay. It's bananas. It's bananas. I wish I had a job where all I had to do was just like, all right, yep, do we want that club or organization to do that event? Sure. And never have to give a decision, never have to give a rationale behind what my decision was. Just never have to do it. I haven't heard him talk since we watched those hearings in Baruch. Right. So when we were in school, the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings were going on, and that's the time that we heard him. Really boring, and it takes a special kind of man to make sexual allegations against you boring, right? So like listening to him talk about what people were accusing him of, and him describing his defense of it, that was boring, right? And so it takes a special kind of boring to make sex even boring to listen to. But that's Clarence Thomas for you. All right. I'm not. We're running short on time, and I want to get to something else. And so, for those of you who have children, anybody in here who have children, put your hand up, or say aye, or however we do it on this thing. Here's the thing. So we've been talking about, so for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about homeschooling, and we were talking about the challenges of homeschooling. Right now I have a 7-year-old who literally will not work with me when it comes to math or anything or life, right? And so it's difficult. And then my wife and I sat down and realized summer's coming. And so on one hand, you're like, oh, great, I don't have to school these people anymore. I don't have to sit back and work on science. I don't have to work on art. I don't have to be their PE teacher. P.S. I was their PE teacher today. I had a whole full-out workout on PE. So I don't have to do anything with these kids anymore. And then you realize normally summer camps are all closed. New York City announced that their summer camp is being closed for the year, so there is no summer camp there. There are a lot of other places that are saying that they're not going to do summer camps, and so we as parents are now scrambling. So there are a couple of things that are in play here, right? So like if there is no summer camp, but you're also not being, how does that work, right? So do you have these kids sitting around playing video games all day long, or do you become the summer camp? Do you go out and do excursions and stuff like that? My wife and I are like trying to figure this out. Like we're looking at, do we rent a house and go somewhere with a pool so that the kids actually have outdoor activities? We do we take do we take vacations? Like I take a week of vacation and she takes a week of vacation, and then we become the camp counselor and take the kids around. So go see different things, Caribbean grandma daycare. See, even that, Mike, is I mean, like, yeah, you can send them to grandma's house, but then what are they doing at grandma's house, right? Especially if for those of us who don't have who don't have grandmothers who are very mobile. So I've got two mothers in our midst, right? My mother and Aisha's mother. And so Aisha's mother is far more active, like just gets out there and will get on the train and all the rest of that stuff. And my mother drives but has less energy than one does, right? So it's so we don't know if we, right, and travel is uncertain, just like Seti said. So we if we're going somewhere, we're not getting on a plane. I don't think we're going to be flying anytime soon. And so we're thinking about driving to different places. Like I said, maybe I take a week off and I drag them to the beach, or we go sightseeing, or we do some stuff in the house that's actual to them just sitting there. I'm at work and they're on a video game or they're watching TV. Um, so we'll figure these things out. But that said, it's up in the air, and I know we can't be the only people that are feeling this, and we can't be the only people who are trying to figure this out. And so I am putting out an idea. Why don't we do a cooperative summer day camp? Hear me out. So I just mentioned that I was going to be I was trying to, my wife and I would maybe take a week off here and we'd split it up. But what if we did that with a bunch of different people? So let's say we get cooperatives running in our general area, like we have 5 families who are all near each other, right? And one parent takes a week off, and that parent is in charge of activities. Maybe stuff happens at their house, and we all agree on how we're going to keep things clean, how we're going to safeguard our children, and what activities we're safe with. And then you send all the kids to one. Then you send all the kids to one parent for one week, and that parent is in charge of the kids for that week. And then the next parent takes a week off, and they're in charge of the kids for one week. They go out and they do different things. And so so we got house projects. Yes, we do have a garden and a bowling alley. We got all that stuff, but I can't do that if I'm supposed to be at work, right? So I actually have to do things for work. And so, yes, and it is a liability nightmare. And this is why it has to be a cooperative and families that are already fine with each other. So if you are a family that already would have a sleepover, would have certain kids over at your house, would already take friends' kids to go do different things, then that would work. But desperate times call for desperate measures, right? And we have people who are lawyers in our midst, and we have people who are contract lawyers and stuff like that. So maybe somebody could write up a liability waiver or something along those lines. The exact same thing that a camp would do. In fact, many of us have signed these things for camp, and we could use that as the basis. But I think that we have to get to the point where we try to be creative and figure this out. And so by the time you get to the 5th parent, you've got 5 weeks of programming, right? And so maybe that gets you into as far into the summer as you need to. And maybe you take a family vacation where you jump in a car and drive somewhere. But something has to happen because all of these camps are being canceled, right? And so this is an opportunity for us as a community to try to figure this out. How do we get everybody together and try to support one another in order to make sure that these kids? Because here's the thing, right? And the reason why summer camps are important and why summer activity is important is there is research that says that when children have summer activities, they come back to school with a higher level of learning. And so when they looked at the gap of education, it was not in, with people who are of means and who are people who are of working class and struggling. It was not during the school year. What they found was, so let's say we started at 1, and uh, by the end of the school year, you got your child to 20, right? 20 was where everybody was, right? Whether you were wealthy or whether you were impoverished. 2019, 21, everybody was all around that area. What then happens is that summer happens, and if you are of means, you get to enrich your child's mind and keep them active and keep them learning, right? So you send them summer camp, you send them, or you guys go out on a vacation in which they are engaged and learning different things. And so now the person who is of means at 20, by summer, they have now gone up 5 more points, right? Because they've learned things. Or you have parents that are engaged and are making them read and are making them watch educational things and really stay engaged. So by September, after summer, they're at 25, right? And so if you are now a parent who is impoverished or doesn't have those means, and you're at of the semester, say in June or like the beginning of July, and the kids are just playing video games because that's all you can do with them. And now they're not really engaging their mind, and they're not really being as engaged as they are in school. They start to lose. There's a summer slack, right? And so actually goes away. Like you're not using it, it goes away, right? And so by the time those children come back to school, because their minds have not been engaged over the summer, right? They're maybe at 17 or 16 or maybe even 15, right? So there is where the gap happens. And so now you have the person of means is at 25, and the child who has been from the family who is struggling is at 15. And so you get another year of education. You add on 20 more points, right? We're just looking at points as an arbitrary thing. You add on 20 more points, the person of means now has 45, and the person, the person who is impoverished has to now catch up, right? So now they've got to get back to the 20 that they was trying to be at in May, and that may take more time. And what they found is that now they're not going to 20. They're not going to just add on 20. So whereas you could just add on 20 to 15 and they'd be at 35, they've got to go back and relearn stuff, end up in remediation in certain places, right? So now they're at 30 where somebody would be at 45, right? And so it's a real psychological thing. It's a real research thing. And so one of the things that we have as a family, I mean, this is something that we would do anyway, but one of the things that we as a family dedicated is to continue the learning over the course of the summertime. And if you have children, this is something that's because in the summer, lazy mind work. Mine's do work every other day for at least an hour and then get a bus ass. See, Michael is an old school Jamaican father, right? So, and I'm not going to speak about new education or new mindsets on parenting, but aside from the cut ass piece, it's not always about lazy. And that's a really important thing to think about. If I'm a single parent and I am working 2 jobs to make sure that I put food on this kid's table, because now they're not getting food, and I have to now pay for childcare because I have to be at work in order to pay the rent, right? And the aforementioned food, it's not always about lazy. It's about not having the means and not having the access that a lot of people have. Mike, I happen to know that you have people who are, um, at, did they look in the basement? Did they lock you in the basement? Yes. And this is the only quiet place in the house. All right. And so it's not about being lazy. And a lot of times our privilege jumps out, right? Our privilege jumps out. It's like, oh, if you're serious about it, you'll find a way, and you'll be serious about your kids' education. That's easy to say if you have one job, you have two parents in the house, and everything is copacetic, or you have a decent job. But if you are really struggling, if you're a working class person and you're trying to make ends meet, sometimes things fall off to the side, and you have to, whether your kid is having a fun and educational summer or if they have food to eat. And that's not always about laziness. That's about what people's circumstances are. And so I bring back this whole thing about doing a summer cooperative, right? And it is, and even if, so Mike, to your point, even if it is about, you have a cooperative of parents, right? Like they have this new show called Council of Dads. I don't know if anybody's watching that. I need to catch up on that, right? So even if you have a cooperative of parents and all they're doing is providing educational structure and supervision during the day, so that when you get back home, or when the kids get back home, or the kids, or you're done with your that when you're done with your work, that they've been engaged, as opposed to you not being able to catch up with them. That's a value, right? And even that point is still a place that I think that we can get to. And that educational what do you call it, stimulation, can happen in the park, right? It can happen at the beach, it can happen at somebody's backyard. So it doesn't have to be really technical, it doesn't have to be really extrapolated to a point where you're taking them to places. And I know the liabilities of dragging people around, walking around with your kids, and who do you trust your kids to go with, is a whole different thing. But get five people, five parents, five families that maybe you guys can come together and come up with a schedule, so that, and maybe it's not a whole week, right? So maybe I take off every Monday, right? And all of the kids come to me on Monday, and the next parent takes off every Tuesday, and all of the kids go to them on Tuesday, and the next parent takes off every Wednesday, and all of the kids go to them on Wednesday, right? I think we have to be flexible, and we have to try to figure something out, because this summer is going to be really, really interesting, because if city camps are closed, that's a whole swath of the community that is not being able to go, that is not being able to be engaged during the summer, right? And if then we are talking about maybe some of the private camps following the city camps and not opening, that's another bunch of people that are not able to be engaged. And then last but not least, are you feeling secure? Even if these camps are open, are you feeling secure with sending your kids there? And then that's yet another swath of the community who may not be engaged. And as I've already mentioned, if the kids disengage over the summer, they're going to come back at a disadvantage. It is there is research. The science is there, and so I think that this is something that we have to try to figure out, and I feel strongly about that with our kids. But I think that we're probably going to have to do the whole "it takes a village to raise a child." This is what it means when they talk about it takes a village to raise a child. And you're right, city pools are closed, right? So like you can't even say, all right, we're going to teach our kids how to swim, or stuff like that. And New York City is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, really considering not opening beaches, right? So you beaches and pools are like two of the mainstays of New York City summer, right? And one of them is already closed, right? And if the beaches are closed as well, And I know what everybody's saying, it's a beach. How do you close a beach? It means that there are no lifeguards and there are no food and no services and no amenities. So the bathrooms are going to be closed. So if you got a 5-year old who needs to go to the bathroom on the beach, guess where they're going, right? And if it's number one, it might be okay. If it's number two, it's not okay, right? Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poop will be floating around. Anyway, so I think that that's an idea. Cooperative not babysitting, cooperative summer camps among friends. Talk to 4 of your friends and see if they find that interesting. It might be the new wave, and there may be some savings there, and maybe that's something that that going forward we might have come upon something that's an amazing idea. But think about that for a second. Last but not least, because I'm going to wrap it up on the 45 like we always do. So I baked. Yeah, I baked. As some of you saw a post about me baking bread. So I baked bread, and I am now fully confident that I will have a Corona 30 by the time this is all said and done, because the bread was so good, so good. We almost ate the whole thing, and the bread was about this big, right? So like, I can't even fit it on the screen. It was about this big, right? I don't bake. I don't like to bake, and because again, as you saw, as you saw in my cooking video, and for those of you who have not checked it out, I will put links in later. But like the cooking, as you saw in the cooking video, I don't like to bake, right? Because when you bake, all the ingredients go in, and they got to be properly measured out, right? And then you got to just go ahead and put it in the oven, cross your fingers, and hope to God that it comes. I don't like that, right? So, what's up, Julie? And so, and Heather, yes, it looked good and it tasted so good. The recipe it's not even my recipe. I literally looked up, what do you call it? Regular or like basic bread recipe, and instead of regular salt, I used garlic salt, and then on top I sprinkled garlic powder. So the crust had a savory garlic powder to it, and so that was it. There's no recipe. It's like yeast, white flour, whatever. Google regular bread. That's what I use. But I realized that when I was baking the bread, that when I was getting ready to bake the bread, that I don't have one necessary thing in order to bake bread: a bread pan. I don't have a bread baking pan like the rectangle ones. I don't own one of those because I don't bake. And so I had to try to figure out, well, now that I finally found yeast, and I'm gonna make this bread. How do I make this? And so I remember that my grandmother used to make braided bread, right? And so I know how to braid. I know how to make dough. And so instead of the detail, the pan called for putting it in half and putting it in two separate pans. I split it in three and rolled them out into three long strips, and I braided the bread, tossed it in the oven on a roasting pan, and it was great. And I'm never doing that again, because again, like I said, they're gonna have to roll me out of this house if that's the case. All right, so we're at time. I wanted to make sure that people knew what was going on. This Saturday, I say the global we, but it's me, right? I am third episode of our photography class. So if you're interested in photography, this week we'll be talking about aperture. That's always a fun one, because it's the one thing that people want to play with that makes their pictures either very sharp or very stylistic. So we'll be talking about aperture this weekend. If you are interested in any of my videos, these are on Facebook. The cooking ones are on my YouTube channel. And the Instagram has my what do you call it? The camera stuff, right? Last but not least, We are, if you're interested in art and you want to do some investing and you need some retail therapy, we the sale is over, but you can still pick up some items on our darkroom site. So if you're looking to buy some art, please support me. I have two children that eat a lot of food. Um, so help me out there, all right? All right. So that's my time. It has been great hanging with you all, and this has been the Greenhouse Effect, and I will see you all next week. Bye, y'all.